It was not.
All right.
Yep.
We want
It's not
to
recording.
get this on.
We're recording now.
Yeah, for reference. Yeah.
Apparently it wasn't set, but yes, we might back up a little bit, Ed, and add some more
Okay.
after everybody's gone. So,
All right.
okay,
Well-
sorry, to the left.
Yeah, that right there. There are a variety of winnowing forks, and they became important because when they cut the grain, it fell to the ground. Now they had to gather it together and rake it together. That was a form of rake. All of those up there are different forms of rake that they would rake it together, pick it up by hand, take it to what they call the winnowing floor. In fact, there's biblical references to the winnowing floor and the thrashing floor, be flat floor where they would flail it to knock the heads out of the hulls and the stalks, and they would separate that, gather the fruit of it, whether it be wheat, barley, oats, whatever. Now, if you'll go clear back to the right, the big thing up there. Okay, that became one of the next innovations. That is called a cradle scythe. The scythe looks exactly like the ones that we saw back there in the corner below the security cameras, but they have added a cradle, they called it, to it. It is a wooden structure held with metal frames, and when you swung that into the crop, you cut the crop and it fell against the wood frame. So as you swung it through the crop, brought it out to the side, you tipped the side, and it all fell in a bundle, what you had cut. So that eliminated the need for the winnowing forks. So we went from by hand, up to what would have been called a modern inconvenience at that time, to have a winnowing cradle. I'm sorry, a scythe cradle, and eliminating the winnowing fork.
I know that at Dairy Night at the museum, we have John Hayes, who usually stands by, another piece that we'll come to later. He stands by the reaper with one of these. John is one of our volunteers, but also a local farmer, and he has one of those, and he explains that what he's standing by is one of the next steps up from this. So he had to kind of show the progression there. He's got one of his own that he brings with him to share.
Okay. I've still got a block on my screen that says this meeting is being recorded. I don't know whether you can knock that out or not.
You might have to hit OK on your end, Ed.
Oh,
for
got
that
it,
to go
you mean?
away. Yeah, say got it.
There, I got it. Okay.
We just don't want to miss any of this this information.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at a couple other things before we move on. The red things, there's two red, they're horse-drawn. They have two shovel-like on them. Those were potato diggers. They were not plows. They were to dig potatoes with. And you went down the row and you dug the potatoes. They came up to the top of the ground, laid there. You let them dry, pick them up, et cetera, et cetera. That was used in the potato harvesting thing. The blue thing, you can't really see it. That is a huge grindstone, sharpening stone. Some of them you could run with your feet by offset concentric attachments on the wheel that you pumped your feet up and down and could spin them. I think this one was designed to be turned by hand, which meant it basically took two people. Somebody had to turn, the other person, they would be holding the sickle or the scythe and move it back and forth to sharpen it. So that was an important thing because, you know, the sharper it was, the easier you had to work swinging it. I don't know how many of the other things you want to touch on. Right above it.
I say I know those are more kitchen tools here. The sausage press and grinder here. I think we've got a coffee press in there. Looks like maybe coffee grinder. This thing here, this paddle. Do you have any idea what this is?
Yeah, it's an apple butter stirrer.
It is.
That's probably Enon has some of those.
That looks just like that. Well, I guess we'll be out there in a couple weekends. I didn't realize that's what that was. We'll have to keep that in mind when we get to Apple Butter Fest weekend that we mentioned that. Down here we've got, we can jump off the wall here. to where we've got, this is on our second floor. We have, those are plows, correct?
Right,
Ed,
those are
on the
moldboard,
second floor.
moldboard plows. The ox or the horse were attached to it. The farmer held onto the handles, tipped it up, got it in the ground, and held it in the ground. You had to be a very strong person to deal with those. And when you were plowing and you hit a rock, you had to get a little bit of luck to avoid being injured, because the point would hit it and stop it, and the ox or horse kept pulling. So the only logical thing is basic physics. The handles flew up in the air, and you either let go quickly, or you went with it, or you let go and it came up and hit you. Not for the weak of heart or weak of body strength.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, this, what we always, the one in the front here, is actually repaired using, a ramrod from a military musket. So
Really?
Virginia likes to, we have this in our docent manual, that literal interpretation of the phrase, swords to plowshares, where you're turning your military might
Yeah.
over into more peaceful pursuits like farming. This one is actually has a musket used, and is, at least is the story we've always been told about it. And you can, if you do look closely at that one, you can see that. So we'll move on from our handheld tools and older implements. And I wanted to go with one of our early companies, and tell a little bit about that. There were 2 Clark County natives that a lot of people have heard of if you're from Clark County. William Whiteley and Oliver S. Kelly had joined together with a native from Germany, Jerome Fassler, who's shown here. And they joined together to form Whiteley, Fassler, and Kelly in 1856, after William Whiteley had invented the combined self-raking reaper and mower. And it could be used for grain or grass harvesting. And we always tell the story. I know that, again, during Night at the Museum, we've had a great Whiteley before that talked. He was such a great self-promoter that he wanted to show how light the reaper was, and that how easy it was to use, that he would unhitch the team of horses from it and hitch himself up to it and run across, to show how easy it was to pull across the field. So we've got this picture here from about 1860, and you can see the now comparison, that he's around the Esplanade area, and facing towards the north side of town. And the way we figured this out was we figured out that church, what that was in the picture, that it was in later ones, because we knew that we'd always been told this was around the Esplanade, but we couldn't figure out which direction we were facing. So at the time, Whiteley, Fassler, and Kelly's factory would have been on the east side of the Esplanade, where the Marriott is now. So he would have been, it's out of the frame here of the picture. So that's that early history. His partner, one of the other partners was O.S. Kelly, which he's still, well, he has, Fassler's kind of doesn't have a lot deep in the roots of Springfield that people know a lot about, but Kelly has, the arcade later replaced the factory that had been there on the east side of what is now the Esplanade. And we know that Kelly divested himself of his shares in Whiteley, Fassler, and Kelly in 1881, and then Whiteley bought out Fassler and went on to build the East Street shops over on East Street. So that's what I have. Next slide, we've got a picture of William Whiteley here with just one section of the gigantic East Street shops. We know that they were the largest factory in America under one roof. It was multiple connected buildings, which turned out to be probably not a great thing for years later. But we know that he opened the East Street shops around 1882 and moved the operations for the Champion Reaper to be made there. And then after that had left, the arcade had opened the following year in downtown Springfield. But we have a model of the shops in our museum that kind of gives you a better idea of just how massive they were. All of the buildings that were over there, part of his industrial empire. But as you can see from the label on that case, we're using that model to talk about the fire history of Springfield, because the shops had a pretty spectacular end in 1902 when they burned down. But the actual history of Whiteley being out there ended a little bit before that. In 1887, his empire collapsed because he had co-signed on a loan for a friend and then couldn't make good on the loan. He ended up losing $4 million in a day. And that was the first major loss in Springfield's history at that time. It put 2,000 people out of work, and he ended up selling those shops at a fraction of what they were worth in 1887. So at the time of the 1902 fire, there was a bunch of different companies that existed in the East Street shops. So that's how we tell that story over there. We connect it to how that was one of the first fires at the turn of the century that helped to revolutionize firefighting in the area, because they realized how poorly they were prepared to handle something like that. But we've got some other newer things that I wanted to stay on Whiteley a little bit longer. We don't know as much about his other endeavors aside from the Champion Reaper, but we know that he also had the Whiteley Malleable Iron Works, which we've got a sketch of that factory here. And they made parts for stuff for the Whiteley Machine Company, which was another company that he had. And this last spring, I think in April, we got a Whiteley corn harvester, which we were previously unaware of this item. It came up in a sale, and Ed helped us with getting it here and getting it unloaded, literally getting it here. We've got a picture here of us all unloading it from the truck here to get it into the building. And if you've been to any local community parades lately, you may have seen it. Again, we had it in the Memorial Day parade, and we've got it in some parades this fall. We found a little bit of information about it after we'd gotten it. We did some digging in the archives to see what we could find about the corn harvester. And it was in the 1893 Industries of Springfield. And it said that the Whiteley corn harvester is so complete, so simple, and such a wonderfully successful machine that all other corn harvesters have patterned after it as close as they dare, but cannot equal it in any manner, shape, or form. So for it being such a incomparable machine, I've had a really hard time finding other information about it and information about comparable ones that look similar. I know that when I was trying to find more pictures of anything even close to it to use for the parade, I couldn't find anything at all. But Ed, if you don't mind, I've got this great video of the day that we brought it in, where you sat down on the seat there and you explained how it worked. If you don't mind me sharing that, because it's easiest to understand it if you can actually see it sitting on the machine. But I just want to note before I start the video is that we don't have the wings down here. You can see that they're still up. When they go down, it looks kind of like a little airplane with the wings out. So those are still up.
Picture on the left has the wing down.
Yeah. This one is still up on this side, but that one's down. But normally they're both down. So that would be your cutting implement there. So imagine that it's down for this explanation here.
Okay. You got your horse pulling. Here's your corn. So as the corn hits this moves forward, it slices it off. So you catch it. See this right here? Cut off bottom of the corn and comes back, gets that, and you catch it. Second stalk, third stalk, as many as you want, Then you stop the horse, you have twine down here, you tie it up, drop it off. And then you start to do the next one.
So we know, Ed, this has kind of a double seat on it. So would two people have been working at the same time, or could you only go down one row at a time?
Well, in theory, supposedly two people can work at the same time. You can't really see that, but that is like two little seats welded together at the back corner. One faces the direction I'm sitting. The other one faces off to the other side. To be honest with you, if you look at the seats, you would have to be a very slender person if two people are going to share those tame two seats. I think more likely what happens is that the horse is pulling in the direction that I was demonstrating. They cut that row. When they get to the other end of the field, the horse turns around and starts walking back, cutting the next row. The operator swings his feet across, raises the wing that was down from the demonstration, lowers the wing on the other side, and they cut going back. So as they go back and forth, one side, other side. When we got this, a friend of mine, Dennis Wilson, who lives across from Tecumseh School, and he'll proudly tell you that he is a native of Forgy, Ohio, which back in the day, there was a station there on the interurban line at a little town called Forgy. Well, Dennis called me and said he'd seen this on an auction and he was going to buy one because he just thought it was neat and knew I was involved with the Heritage Center, and said one of them has got a sign on it that says Whiteley, Springfield, Ohio. I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, we'd be interested in it." Talk to Roger and Natalie and so on. They said, yeah. So he went to the auction. He bought two of them, came to my place. I remember the snow was so deep we could hardly get to the barn to unload them. We had two of them. One of them had this double seat. The other one had none. He said, "Which one do you want?" And I said, "Well, you tell me." And he said, "No." I said, "You found them. You want one? Give us the other one." And Dennis very generously said, "Well, you know what? The Heritage Center ought to have the one that's complete with the seat." Since that time, I have seen offers for the seats of up to $500 by seat collectors wanting that very seat. Nothing else, just the seat. So we have something that's unique and rare, and definitely Springfield. And thanks to Dennis Wilson, we have it in our collection now.
We're very grateful to have it.
When you think about how much we've showcased it just here recently, it's been in a few parades and it'll be in another one this weekend. That was a good investment on his part. We've definitely gotten it some attention.
And it's a great looking piece. I mean, restored, it's beautiful. So yeah, it's really great to have.
Yeah, it came that way. The gentleman that owned it and was auctioning it off, he had 5 corn cutters, only 2 of them were Whiteleys, and he was selling them all. And he had restored it. And if you get up close and look at that, the patina, the rust was still there. He has just covered it with paint, and it's very, very good restoration.
I'll say now that we move on from Whiteley, we know that the Champion Reaper didn't stop with the end of his company, even though his company went out. The Warder Bushnell and Glessner ended up buying the rights to sell and make the Champion Reaper. So I've got a few things here that we have from the collection. On the second floor in the museum, we've got the Warder Bushnell and Glessner stained glass window that's on the one side of the arch that we have up there on the second floor. And so they had bought the rights, and we have, this is their factory in 1899, showing lathe operators making pieces for the Reaper. And then we've got this On the next slide, we've got a great, an employee photo from around the same time period as well. And then we have this expo photo that they had from 1899 as well, where where different companies were advertising their wares, and we've got the Reaper that they have one of them here, and they've got a little sign here that says "Give it a whirl," so they're encouraging people to try it. And then in the museum, you can see our Champion Reaper, and I have a clarification that I want to make here. I think, and Casey, in the docent manual, we kind of conflate this with still being under Whiteley at the time. Do we know the time period of our particular Reaper? Because the great advertisement that we have here showing it being used on the White House lawn is from Warder Bushnell and Glessner. So that would be the later time period. Do you know if we know?
I would have to actually check. See if I can find my copy of Heartland real quick and see if there's a date.
Yeah,
there.
If we've got a date, I can't. It dawned on me as I was putting the slides together that that I don't know the date of ours, so I don't know if where it falls under, if it's after Whiteley for sure or not. But we do know this one here. I wanted to share this. This was a new one that's come to town. Dean Hurley was able to purchase this 1880s Champion Light Reaper from a farm in Wisconsin, and it came here earlier this year. He's has the Springfield Historical Society, a newer organization where he's working on opening a museum with some of the things that have been collected over the years. So there's another Reaper in town, and it's definitely different than what we have. I know our
Natalie, what year did you say this was?
all it said, all I've seen is 1880s, not a specific time frame for it.
Okay. Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
I want to point something out to you.
So this is the one we have.
Okay, that's the one we have. Okay, the one in the lower left, I don't know what that one is, where that is or what it is. That's
it's the same one. I think that this might be a reverse negative possibly, but this is it when we had it out at Carillon Hill for some they were doing demonstration using it, which I have in coming up in a little video.
So according to
something doesn't look right, because in one picture the cutter bar is on the right, and the other picture it's on the left.
It's reversed. I think this is a reverse negative.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
According to
go ahead.
According to Heartland, a restored 1870s combination mower Reaper.
Okay, so we are still in the Whiteley era on this one.
Okay.
So
all right. Now go to your next slide. This is a definitely later, because if you'll notice the difference, the previous slide, it was simply a cutter bar. The cutter bar cut the grain, it fell to the ground, and they had to come behind with winnowing forks and gather it together in order to bind it and then set it up to make shocks. This one is what they called a raker, a self-raker. See the, well, they're the boards with little teeth like on, yes.
Yeah. It's actually, it says rake on it, I think.
Okay. And the grain would be cut, drop on that platform. They would swing up over the top, come down and rake it around and off on the ground without ever stopping the animal. There's a continuous flow. Those arms were on a concentric that would take them around, sweep up, while the next arm would be sweeping, the other one would be coming up. And they would continuously rotate, sweeping that off, which was, again, a big step up.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have to gather them together with winnowing forks. They simply, the bundles were laying there, they picked them up, tied them up, and they would set them up in a shock. You set 7 bundles together I'm sorry, you said took 7 bundles to make a shock, 6 of them standing up. The 7th one was fanned out, laid over the top of the other 6 in order to shed rain in the field while you're waiting on the thrashing rig to come to thrash your grain. You had to kind of get the rain to run off the grain. I can't say rain and grain the same word here.
So did they bind them together once they had the 6 together?
No.
Were they bound? They just stood together. They were just
leaned
stacked.
together.
Okay. Leaned. Okay.
It was something of an art, I guess, to be able to. They used to take pride in having the best looking shocks in the neighborhood.
Was that ever something that was judged at like fair competitions or something?
I'm not aware that it was.
Grain stacking. I've got a
like
little
shocking would be.
I've got a little video here. I just want to, I think it's a couple minutes long. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but I just wanted to show you it in motion. This is at Carriage Hill in the at Huber Heights area.
Can you stop that a minute, Natalie?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the later. Oops.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Oh, I lost what I wanted to show the folks.
Oh, okay. I can back up a little bit. Oh, never mind. It jumped. I jumped to the end. There we go. Is that the same one?
Go forward just a little bit. There's a better picture. Keep going. Keep going.
I think I may have.
Okay, that'll show it to a certain extent. Okay, they've again added another advance to their harvesting equipment. It's cutting it, as in the Cyrus McCormick Reaper. It's dropping back onto a belt, and it goes along and starts up the incline there. See the belt taking it up the incline? Okay, look at the box, the cylinder. Come back over. Oh, too far. Right
over
there.
Here.
Yes, that cylinder contains the binder twine.
Huh.
This machine was capable, as it reached the top, it bound them together and tied them. A very large and significant invention, and then dropped them down the side, and they fell off to the side already bound up. So
this is a binder reaper.
This is this is a step beyond the one that we have in the Heritage Center.
So yeah, this video, they did use ours for the beginning of the video,
yours.
but then they're using other ones that they have in their living farm collection.
Yes.
But yeah, you can see that that first one with the orange one, it was just dropping it behind it, you know,
Right.
So they'd have to go back and you could see the guy stacking at the end there. Yeah.
They had to tie it themselves. This one kicks them out already tied.
So this is these are up on YouTube. This was the company that we had worked with, History Works, that helped to make the videos that demonstrate some of the pieces that we have. And I find them very useful in me seeing, and we've got them running in the museum. And I just wanted to share this. We know that the Springfield is still called the Champion City is one of our nicknames, but another way that the Champion Reaper lives on is that's the vintage baseball team that plays in Springfield over here on the left-hand side. Is the Springfield team is the Champion Reapers that are using that old name. They're playing against the Dayton Cloudbuster team over here on the right. But so they still play throughout the spring, summer, and fall. And then to move on from that history, it evolved into more companies, this is where I get all confused with all of Springfield's history, is that there's so much merging and changing of names and companies. But we know that Warder, Bushnell, and Glessner, which was making the Champion Reaper, they were one of, what was it, 6 companies, Ed? I think, I can't remember, of five different companies that merged together to eventually become what was International Harvester in 1902. And I found a little more information about the monopoly thing. And I'll say this, you can add more or to it, but we know in 1918, International Harvester was accused of being a monopoly, and the government agreed to allow them to continue to operate as long as they no longer made reapers. So that is when International Harvester switched to making solely cars and trucks, or making trucks. So this is a picture we have from many years after that. This is a 1934 shift change at International Harvester.
It's interesting, Natalie, you all felt like you were misspeaking when you said cars. When you meant trucks. International Harvester made cars at one time. And next year, the National Group of International Harvester Collectors are bringing their summer show to the Clark County Fairgrounds in June 23rd, 24th, 25th. And there will be there at least one, if not more, International Harvester cars.
What was the car? Did they have a, what was the car name?
It was called the brass car because it contained so much brass. The lights, everything. It's a beautiful machine. I don't know any more about the history as to why I don't know how many they made, don't know why they quit. I just know that I saw one 2 years ago. I knew that the national show is coming to Springfield. I talked to the man and said, would you bring it to Springfield? Or would you bring it to the 2022? It's called Roundup, International Harvester Red Power Roundup, because it's mostly about tractors. And he said, yeah, where is it going to be? And I said, Springfield, Ohio. He smiled and said, well, I don't know. That'd be an awful long haul. And I thought, uh-oh, he's going to want mileage or something. I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, I'd have to get out of my drive, go down a mile, get on Interstate 75 and drive to Springfield. I looked at him and he said, I live in Perrysburg, Ohio. That car's right here in Ohio, and it'll be coming to the Roundup.
Well, that's exciting. That's really cool. I'll have to look that up and see what those look like. And we'll have to keep an eye out for that next year. So I'm gonna move away from company histories for a little bit to go to some people history. So one of the most important local people to farming history nationally and locally and everywhere is A.B. Graham, Albert Belmont Graham. He was the founder of 4-H here in Springfield in 1902. And so 4-H started a rural revolution, education revolution to help eventually boys and girls, but it was initially just boys to nurture their curiosity for out of the classroom projects. So we've got some great pictures in our collection that actually came from A.B. Graham's collection himself, showing this is a soil testing picture here that we've got, and here they are out in front of the A.B. Graham building, it is now called, in 1902 for a meeting. We know that the initial club had about 85 members in it, and then we've got other pictures from later years because we have a large collection from him, including diaries from when he was superintendent of Springfield Township Schools, and he would document traveling from school to school. So here you go, see Patty, this one here, he was at Rockaway the whole afternoon, January 15th, 1902, which was the same day that he founded 4-H, because at the bottom here it says completed. Oh, I guess it was boys and girls. My mistake. He did have girls initially. Completed boy and girl list for Experiment Club. That is our reference to the start of 4-H here, the Experiment Club. So we have him here much later. I believe he died in 1960. But we know this is from the first state issue of a stamp, 1952. That Springfield and Clarence J. Brown was very, senior was very instrumental in making sure that he got that stamp acknowledging that 4-H was started here in Clark County, which I know that there are some people that try to argue against that, but we know that it really did start here. So this is a young A.B. Graham. This is him, much older. There's some we have a great portrait of him that we've got pictures of as well that I don't have on this slide. But he stayed involved in the agricultural education movement through a lot of different avenues. He was part of the Ohio State Extension Office for a long time, and stayed involved in 4-H all through his life as it developed. So, you know, he saw a whole more than 50 years of what he had started growing. So this, Ed, is where I was hoping you would jump in and tell a little bit more about 4-H and FFA. I know your experience is more with local FFA, but I want a little bit about, you know, if you've been out to the county fair, you see that, you know, there's lots of projects from 4-H, different groups, and FFA is heavily represented, especially if you're lining up to get the food out there on that one end of the fair. So if you could talk a little bit about either one of those or both.
Well, the 4-H, of course, was founded here in Clark County. It is a part of the Ohio State University. It is they call it the extension of the Ohio State University, which is where we get the name Extension Office and Extension Service. The extension educator is the 4-H leader for the county. Every county in Ohio has a 4-H program. That's not true in all the states, but every county in Ohio has a 4-H program. Ohio has one of the largest enrollments in 4-H, and they of course started with strictly agricultural crops and livestock, and now they've expanded into all kinds of areas, including computers and electronics, and so of course the sewing, the home arts they call them, are still a part of it. The agriculture education programs with the Smith-Hughes Act of 1912 established that schools would be instructing vocational training for agriculturalists, and it became known as agricultural education. It has evolved over the years. It is still a major organization. A few years ago, because so many of the people entering into the program were not geared and did not intend to go into production agriculture, but rather ag-related things. Originally, the FFA stood for Future Farmers of America. I'm not sure how many years ago, approximately 15, the National FFA organization changed it. FFA now stands for FFA, period. It just is simply the FFA organization, because so many of them are not going into production farming. So many of the students that participate. Here in Clark County, there's a chapter in each of the county schools except Shawnee. The Global STEM Academy has an FFA chapter. So there are 6 of them here in the county. They're all very active. They participate state levels, national levels. It's a strong organization, develops leadership skills as much, if not more, than education in the agriculture field through their competitions, their public speaking, parliamentary procedure, and a number of those things.
I know my daughter goes to STEM now. She's in 7th grade, and so she's automatically a member of FFA there, and she loves it. So I have a feeling over the next 6 years, she's going to be teaching me a lot more about farming. She's been helping put together a timeline of FFA history the last couple of weeks. So she's been teaching me all about it. So she's very excited to be a part of that.
She'll be home with her blue corduroy jacket soon. with Ohio on the back and stem at the below the emblem.
Yeah, I just picked her up from an FFA club on Monday, so she's officially doing the after school stuff too. So
Yep.
she's really into it. So, so that's really, really great. So I'm feeling we'll be out at the fair more than we ever have been in the past. So I've got a picture here that shows A.B. Graham with another very important local person to agriculture nationally, worldwide, even. We have here, we've got A.B. Graham here. I don't know who this guy is shaking in his hand, but we've got A.B. Graham. We've got George Harrison Scholl, the man that I'm talking about. He was very instrumental in the development of hybrid corn. And the guy he's shaking hands with is Orton Rust, who was the head of the Historical Society at the time. This picture was taken in 1950. And Orton Rust had organized a ceremony to acknowledge A.B. Graham and Harrison Scholl's contributions to the field of agriculture. So this is one of those photos from there. So a little bit more about Scholl. We've got some another picture of him here. Scholl Hall at Clark State is named for him. We have the dedication program when it opened in 1998, and he let's see. I know he had siblings also that were involved in agricultural science. So he's a local school teacher as well and scientist. And so a little bit more. So I've got his other people. His elder brother, J. Marion Scholl, was a botanical illustrator and plant breeder. Scholl graduated from Antioch in 1901 and got his doctorate from University of Chicago, and then was a botanical expert in the early 1900s at Carnegie. And then that's where he became the expert in plant genetics and helped develop hybrid corn, which has changed the way food is today. Ed, if you can talk a little bit more about why that was such a big deal.
Prior to hybrid corn, the farmer would take seed from a previous crop and plant it. So there was what amounted to inbreeding. In so doing, the stalks became weaker as it was inbred. And George Scholl began working genetically. He would inbreed deliberately several generations. It's on the Mendelssohn theory that we all learned in biology, with Mendelssohn and his peas that he cross-pollinated and so on. He began doing that with corn and discovered that if you took two weak parent hybrids and created what they call the F1 generation, when you cross those two, you got really strong traits, characteristics of both of the plants, and the resulting plant was much more vigorous, much taller, much more productive, and hence hybrid seed corn became what it is today, where they genetically have developed it to a number of, the hybrids are now resistant to diseases, they're resistant to falling over in windstorms, all kinds of things. Ohio State published a thing, I got it through the alumni thing, the 10 most significant inventions in agriculture that have advanced them more than anything over the years, and hybrid seed corn, and George Scholl was one of the 10, along with like Cyrus McCormick with the Reaper and so on. This was a big deal, and he came from right here in Clark County.
That's a huge deal, yeah. He was from Pike Township, I believe. So. We've got some more corn related things here from our collection. This is a corn sheller here, used to separate the kernels. So would that be how you would separate how they would have planted new corn kernels then? Was
back before hybrid seed corn, yes. Can you run your pointer over to the upper right? Now get right in the middle of it, where the little prong, right there. Mm-hmm. You see those little prongs sticking out?
Yeah.
Okay, if you were just going to shell the corn, you dropped it in the top up there, and you turn the crank, and that big disc with those protrusions, shelled the corn off the cob. The cob came out the bottom. You got the corn. You fed it to the chickens, the horses, whatever. The thing on the end that I had you point to first,
Mm-hmm.
they used that when they were getting their corn for next year's crop. You're all familiar with an ear of corn. As you get up to the top edge, the kernels get smaller and smaller and smaller. You took the corn, you always picked your biggest, best ears, I guess, and you took it and you spun that and you stuck it in there. And those little prongs sticking out took all of the seed off of the end, the small seed. Only the good seed remained. That's what you shelled off and planted. But you didn't want the little seeds. So that was something that removed the little seeds before you shelled the corn to plant for next year.
Well, you can see down here at the bottom, there's these 3 in a row that shows how something like this would have been mounted onto like a bin, so that you're cranking the corn into the bin there to catch it. So when I first shared this on our Facebook page as a what is it, I had it totally upside down, and I didn't even know it because I had no idea how to use it. And people, when they commented, they're like, that's a corn sheller, but it's upside down. And I'm like, oh, that's just because it was easier to take a picture that way. But I totally didn't know what I was doing. So that's why I've got you, Ed, and other people and farmers that can correct me. But we've got down here a picture that we had of a Springfield steam engine back here that is powering a corn sheller here, which I've got a later slide and later video that shows some engines powering some of these machines.
And Casey, we just recently, like last month, we got a Kelly duplex sheller, right?
We did.
Really?
Well, no, we got
parts of it.
Oh, that's right.
A sheller
grinder.
Well, yes, we got it. Yeah, we got a Kelly duplex mill.
Yeah.
It
looks similar to this, but
the one down here.
Yeah. Well, we did get another corn sheller though. I'm not sure it was a Kelly duplex.
No, that was a Foos.
Yeah.
Okay.
The big standing one.
So this is a little bit step up from our
mill would have been.
one.
Yeah.
Well, so some other corn related photos we have, because we have this wonderful program, Past Perfect, where I can just type in the word corn and it will tell me everywhere that I can find anything that has to do with corn in our collection. We've got a picture here showing agricultural students that are expecting the corn for the best seed. So that's how they're trying to pick out their best ones here. So you see them all laid out on the tables here. We have Southern fried corn recipe from our Kresge's recipe box that we have back in our commercial restaurant section. And then this one here is a postcard invite to the 1912 corn show and the Pitchin' Corn Carnival from 1932. We've got in our the program in our collection. And then again, of course, our corn model building. Some other things that we have in the museum. In this case, we don't have the actual large item. We've got this case here in the our Gateway Gallery where we have a lot of different patent models, and there are several different farming related items in there showing that, you know, not only were people using and making farm machinery here, but they were patenting things in this area. So we have this little tiny one here is the Ross ensilage. Is that how you say it? Ensilage and fodder cutter. So we've got this little tiny one here that been in the patent model that they would use for demonstrations or for at trade shows. But down here, this is one that I found online that shows a large Ross model that just to show real life. But we got some other pieces from the Ross company that was here making things in Springfield. E.W. Ross Company was founded in 1850, incorporated in 1890. They made these cutters. They also made sugarcane cutters and silos, which we have some other silo brochures much later. They were bought out by the William Bailey Company in 1920, and they became a division of Bailey as the Ross Equipment Company, and they continued to make silos. So this is from the, that time later, when they were making silos, that brochure that we have. And then we've got a great drawing of their factory that was out on Warder Street, back in our oversized map drawers in the archives. So another local company that eventually must have gone completely out, but I don't think I went all the way to the end of their. Oh wait, no, we know. They continued through the 1990s, so I'm not sure if they were bought out by another company at that point. We've got two restored grain drills. Well, so Ed, this is where I want to ask you the difference between the grain drills. So these are the big giant ones that we have here, but I believe the push one we have next to it is also a grain drill, which I have on a later slide. So is there just
they're both grain
different
drills.
sizes?
They're significantly different. If you'll look, the yellow one, look down, do you see the disc, the black disc on each of the seed tubes?
Yeah.
That's a disc drill. The disc opened the furrow, the grain dropped down through and dropped behind the disc, which was in the ground, and that's how it planted it. The bottom one,
The Superior?
yes, it has a hoe opener. It has a shoe with a hoe that drags through the ground, a tube, like it drags through the ground, makes the opening, the grain drops behind it. If your ground was good mellow ground without rocks in it, you could use the disc openers. They were more effective, easier to pull, got a better stand. If you had rocky ground, which would damage the disc when the rocks hit it, you use the hoe openers, which scraped ahead of it and opened the ground. So given the choice, if your ground would permit it, you wanted the disc. If not, you use the hoe openers. And both of them.
So did people have, they had both? People would have both?
Probably not. You couldn't afford both.
Okay. I was gonna say, it was just a matter of knowing your soil or knowing your area. Yeah.
Yes.
So
they would have two boxes at least, and these have three. The front box would be the seed. The back box is the fertilizer. It would drop fertilizer down the tubes with the seed and then close the ground behind it. There's a little one, and you can see it very clearly on the hoe drill. Go to the front edge of it. Front, up.
Up here?
Up, go over toward the red drill. Come to the end, go up now, straight up, back. Oh, you went past it. There's a little lip, right? The little lid, right there.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Just the back of
okay.
The little lid down an inch.
Okay,
right?
down here.
That little lid, that's where you put small seed like clover, alfalfa, and you could use these drills to plant grass seed as well as wheat, oats, barley, rye. These were I would say probably they were considered pretty top of the line fancy drills because they were complete with fertilizer and grass seeder attachments.
A little bit more about these particular ones that we have. This one's a Thomas grain drill made by the Thomas and Mast Company, which was a John H. Thomas had partnered with P.P. Mast, another major industrialist who had a whole bunch of other companies. It's not time to talk about all of them. But Matt Thomas and Mast first started were together in 1874, and then Thomas broke off on his own. So this is from when it was just the Thomas manufacturing that he had with his two sons. And their factory still stands. It's the Ice House Apartments next to the YMCA currently. That big building there used to be the Thomas factory, and the Thomas family home was where the Muffler Brothers is at the corner of McCrite and Limestone. That's where the Thomas home once was. And John Thomas is the really tall obelisk, the tallest one in Ferncliff was John Thomas's. And I've got, in the next slide, I just wanted to show that when I went to Henry Ford this summer, they had a Superior grain drill. And theirs is a disc one then, right?
Yes,
Ed?
yes, it's a
And
disc one. You're looking at the front of it, and now you can see that little box across the front. You put the grass seed in if you want to sow grass seed.
okay. So you can see that Springfield and Clark County products are all over the place and were used all over the world. This was one that was represented in the Henry Ford. I thought that was pretty neat. And I've seen online people sharing pictures of them in other places as well. So they show up all over the place. I just wanted to share some of these to show you. This is out at the fair. This was a few years ago, Ed.
Yeah.
In our tent, we had the antique equipment, but this was a whole section that I thought was really neat, where you had set up with a bunch of different equipment and pieces to have people guess what they were.
These are mostly,
and I do
mostly household items.
Yeah. So this was a neat little thing out in that tent. But the next one is this year's tractor tent that we had out there, and
these were the theme this year was orphans and oddballs. These are all tractors that were very few made. No one has ever heard of them. We searched around and gathered them in. Just for a quick example, on the left-hand side, you see where it says Twin Row, the red one. That was a Montgomery Ward tractor. They sold it through the catalog. You bought it. They delivered it to your house, and Montgomery Ward sold it. Which they were sold at a good price, but Lord help you if you wanted any repairs or parts because there were no dealers.
Was that the only tractor Montgomery Ward sold? I mean, or did they have like a whole line of, okay.
No,
Wow.
they quickly found out, the people caught on pretty quick that this was not a good thing to own.
Diversified too much.
Well, here I'm going to jump ahead. There is a full video of all the tractors that were in that tent. Ed did voiceovers of the descriptions of each of them. The video kept crashing the PowerPoint because it's a large size video. So I just have one of the little short one here of the Farmall Cub, which was the pretty white one.
No, this is not a joke, and it's not a restoration done by a colorblind person. This restored Farmall Cub came from the factory painted white rather than the traditional Farmall red. As the late Paul Harvey would say, and now the rest of the story. In 1950, the brass at International Harvester agreed to a plan by the marketing department to draw attention to the Farmall line of tractors by painting some of them white. Each dealer was sent at least one of each model tractor painted white. The instructions to the dealer were to take the white tractor out into the community and use it as a demonstrator to draw attention to the Farmall line of tractors and implements. The dealer was then, at the company's expense, supposed to repaint the tractor red before they sold it. So how is it that this one is still white, you might ask? Well, some customers insisted the tractor be left white, while it was rumored that some dealers collected the repaint fee from the company, but they left the tractors white and sold them that way. No matter what the story, it is a fact that some were put to use on the farm and to this day remain white Farmalls. The story on this particular tractor is that the owner has many Cub tractors and is well known as a Cub collector throughout the Ohio area, as well as the nation. He received a call from a man who wanted to sell this Cub. He wasn't real interested until the man mentioned that somebody had messed around and painted this one white. Well, he asked for the serial number, and through that he determined it was in fact an original white demonstrator and made the purchase. And what you see in this tractor is a restoration of the tractor to its original showroom condition.
So I'll make sure. Oh, Sorry, I'll make sure that I link the full video on YouTube for all of these, but I picked, this one was my
Great
favorite.
job, Ed.
I love the story of this one. And and that was one of my favorite. I mean, they were all really pretty out there, but I really did like the white one. It was really cool looking.
Yeah,
Because it was just so weird to see a white one.
Yeah. And I
So,
think
and
you
then-
have the one that drew the most attention. This one
Yeah,
did not draw the
I
most
do.
attention. Here's
This one, you had the owner was Rick Moore. Yes, he was out there over the weekend, the first weekend of the fair, to demonstrate this tractor. So you'll get to see what it does. It's really neat. So I'll let this one play.
It's a British field marshal, and it starts with a 12-gauge shotgun shell.
Yeah, you heard right, the 12-gauge shotgun shell.
That's the piece that makes the gun go off. Primer, they call it. Same as a shotgun shell. And this is RS powder. And I put that much of that in it. I guess that's a quarter of a teaspoon. And this 4831, this gunpowder or rifle powder, you fill it full. And then you just crimp it with the gun thing. And there you have it. Well, when you put the shotgun shell in it and get it set, the crankshaft is probably 8 degrees past top dead center. And then when you put the shell in and hit it, it just blows the piston back 9 inches. And that's what makes it spin. Ready? That's all there is to it.
Well, that was definitely a big draw out at the fair, and Rick was really fun to talk to. We got to see him started a couple times, and we got a video of it the first time that he started it. He had Sydney, who was the one who filmed this and put the really great little film together, but he asked her if she wanted to hit it. and I was trying to film it just for fun, and that was an unusable video because it was much louder than I expected, and I ended up dropping the camera and shaking it around, and there may have been some swearing in that one, so that wouldn't have been a usable video that we could have. But yeah, it was definitely a big crowd pleaser. I know he had some misfires, which makes it kind of more exciting for him to get it going. But that was a pretty neat thing to have out there, Ed. Glad you got him. So I'm looking forward to what you have planned for next year for the fair. This is one we recently highlighted this company on our Facebook page for a What Is It Wednesday. We had this picture from a feature about the company in the it was in the newspaper that we shared. Does anybody on here know what this thing is here? Down in the corner. Ed knew what it was right away, and there was quite a few people that did know what it was. It was a tractor drawn corn planter. that Oliver Corporation made here in Springfield. So we've got a few pictures related to Oliver here. Their plant was along the tracks. I'm actually not entirely sure which street it was on. Does anyone remember where exactly it was? Got two pictures of it here by the train tracks, but I'm not sure what street we're near. And if it's okay, they were on Monroe Street between Spring and Linden. So that's what these pictures are around. We've got a great factory photo here. And then we've got one of their company photos from their stag picnic, which I'm assuming that meant that no women were allowed at that particular picnic, but we do know that there were some women working there from the picture here. And I was talking to Ed about this one later. This is from the 1951 spread that they had about the history of the company with pictures of the plant and some of the products that they made. And they had a cotton harvester here down. That was another one of the products that they made locally. So that's another one where the full history gets confusing to me. But they started in the 1860s, but they ended up getting bought out by, I think they became American Seed. They were part of American Seeding, I think.
Oliver Corporation became part of White Motor Corporation. White Motor bought Oliver, Minneapolis Moline, and Cockshut, which was a Canadian tractor. They bought all three of them, combined them, and that was in about 1980 something. And within a short period of time, they were completely out of the business.
They were all okay.
White Motor was something of a corporate raider. They
we have their collection of very large white superior white.
Yeah.
Cooper. Is that Cooper comes in there somewhere too? I think. No, not Ed's. Bob's saying no. No, superior white is back in the collection. But yeah, they went out in the completely out. They're not around it.
They're
okay.
gone.
That was one I wasn't sure if they had just become something else. Which sometimes the trick with some of these companies, just figuring out what they were. Just when we were trying to go through the files back in the archives, we know that the companies were under various names as they changed names throughout the year. So on the outside of a box, it might have 5 or 6 different names, knowing that they're all the same company at some point. So you gotta know which companies you're looking for. Same thing with the banking histories. Super confusing. We have. This is another IH product here. They made hay presses. We have this great picture showing one in use in 1915. And this was a mobile press that they could take out to the field. And here, this is a great picture of maybe not exactly the same model, but a similar model here. You can see the bales being pressed over here. But the great thing about this particular picture is that it ran in the newspaper in 1935, saying that this was a picture from 1912. Actually, it's 1908. Say that this picture from 1908 and identified everybody in the picture, which is like a gold mine when we find something like that, where it actually tells you who everybody in the picture is. So we know that this was Ora Heath, Charles Phillips, Russell Sheeters, Edward Turner, and A.B. Huffenberger. And we know that when they published it in 1935, the picture was owned by A.B. Huffenberger on Columbus Avenue. So we own the picture now. It's in our archives, but it's a great picture to have with all of everybody identified in it.
This is an interim step in the hay making process. Prior to this, the hay was raked up, put in the barn loose, and they had to fork it out in the wintertime as they wanted to feed it. International Harvester and some other companies, particularly a New Holland company, came up with a way. You brought the hay loose, and instead of putting it in the mow loose, you fed it into the other side. You can't really see the pile on the other side of the colored picture. You pushed it in, and that thing with a board on it went up and down, and it pushed the hay down, and then the plunger pushed it back, a slice at a time. Every time it went up, down, it produced another slice. It bound it together. You put wires around it. And as it came out the back of the chamber, look down in the lower picture, you see them stacked behind them there.
Mhm.
That it came out like that, which at the volume was way less now. Your mow would hold 2, 3, 4 times as much hay for your animals in the winter as it would with loose hay. So it was easier to handle and you got more to it. The picture, the big picture there with the men leaning on it, and interesting notes. See the chamber, see the numbers, 2, 3, 4. You made the bale whatever length you wanted. When you got the length you wanted, you see the up on top of it, the little square, whoop, down right there. You dropped a board in that had holes through it. That stopped that bale. You plunged the holes, you ran the wires through to the other side, and you tied the wires together. And then when it came out, it was wire tied. So if you wanted to bale 2 foot long, you dropped the board in when it got to 2. If you wanted it 3 foot, and if for some reason you thought you were man enough, you could make it 4 foot long, and you could make it whatever length you wanted. But this was the precursor. It didn't take long before they figured out, hey, if we put a thing on the side there that picked the hay up off the ground, we could drive around the field and pick it up and run it in and make bales, and that became what we know as the hay baler.
The hay baler is one of the things. We had a hay baler in the tent at the fair too, didn't we?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And notice down in the lower left picture, that's horsepower. The shiny one that's painted, the color picture, see the belt at the left hand side, that's being powered by a tractor.
Yeah, you can see the belts up there. Okay.
Down here at the bottom, that's being powered by horsepower. There's a gear clear out at the right end. The horse walked around in a circle, pushing that shaft that turned the gear, that ran the power shaft that went along the ground, up under, and ran the baler. The trick was, the way the stories I've heard, if you had a horse, he had to step over that every time he made the circle. And getting a horse to step over that, to get a trained horse, was valuable. If you had a stepper, they called it, he would step over and keep right on going without hesitating. So eventually they belted it up to a stationary engine, did it that way. But both pictures at the bottom were that way.
So we've got another one later that shows more of some powered machinery. This one here we can do real quick just to show to some of the other things we have to do with another part of farming, chickens and egg. We've got this is an egg candler here. So Ed, how could you tell if you had a fertilized egg here? What color would you see? What would you see when you?
The one that's on the candler is fertile. It will begin to show blood vessels and development of a chicken in it.
Okay.
And it was very disconcerting, I imagine, to the housewife who cracked an egg open, and instead of an egg and a yolk, out came part of a chicken embryo.
So the candler would be a very useful thing to have to know.
It would be if I was going to have eggs for breakfast, yeah.
Yeah. We've got a picture here from our night at the museum where we usually have little chicks, live chicks that are near our incubator that we have on display. So the next page is the incubator, a Buckeye incubator. And that company was founded in Springfield in 1893, and they had their factory along Buck Creek here across from, so this is limestone here. You can see the New Sun and the Covenant. So it's over to is that about where the Kelly?
If you go up the overpass and look going north and look out over the overpass, that's where it was.
That's about where it was.
Down on Warder Street.
So this picture here, this one here is from 1939. And it was here till about 1960. We have one of their incubators here in the collection. Another, I guess this is another form of incubator, right? The brooders.
Well, this is
chicken
after they were hatched. They had to
after they were
Yeah.
kept warm.
Yes. And so they had to have a brooder to keep them warm until they developed enough of their body system that they could survive in colder temperatures. So you had this hover over the top of them with heat in it. The top one is coal fired. The bottom one is kerosene or diesel fuel fired. And they would heat them up, keep it warm until the chicks were able to survive in the natural weather.
And Ed, you explained to me earlier that it was vital that you had a rounded brooder like this.
Yeah. If you had a square one, they would bunch up in the corners, and if it was down low, they would bunch up and they would get on top of each other, trying to keep warm and suffocate the ones on the bottom. So you wanted a round enclosure around them, and you had to keep a constant temperature. And
you see this one. This one we had is from Newtown, but you can see it's stamped Springfield. So does that mean that they had a division that was making them locally, or is that just, I don't know what that, this is what we have in our collection that's stamped Springfield.
that one is one of the Blue Flame, not the Newtown.
But it does say Newtown Giant Incubator Company on it also, but then it says Springfield stamped on it. So I'm not really sure the connection there.
Not sure.
I kind of want to say maybe there was like a manufacturing
Maybe,
Some
yeah,
part-
branch here in Springfield.
yeah, I don't,
We could
I don't
check.
know, I
We could
remember-
we
yeah.
can easily do some research on that, but that does
Well,
kind of ring a bell.
I think when I was oh no, I know what it is. That's,
Or it was
I know
so-
the connection. I did write it down. They were bought out by Springfield Buckeye Incubator. So that must have been the connection. They must have become
They
a
were
division of Buckeye
manufacturing the same-
Incubator,
Yeah.
making those same ones, yeah. A couple of our motors, or that would power things. We've got a Foose, and we've got our steam boiler. This is no longer neither of these are on the second floor anymore. This is an older picture of both of these in the museum. They're both now on the first floor, the level boiler, but these would have been used to help power the farm machinery on the farm. And I've got a little video here about labor saving devices like that were powered.
If I labor, I said, God is gonna give me a crown. Yes,
Jump ahead a little bit. There we go. Cider press, which we've got a few of these. Incubator. I could have sworn we had this one hooked up to the motors at one point, but maybe this isn't the one that I was thinking it was. So this is just some general labor saving devices that they had around the farm.
Was that the original soundtrack that the
Ours
history
actually has
works?
no, yeah, ours has no sound on it. The versions that we have.
Okay.
But
So
this
that
is the
was-
one that they have on YouTube. So yes, I
That
think they
was-
may have re-soundtracked or re-edited the music for them when they put them
That
up
was
on YouTube.
that was a
Not
good
what you
choice.
remember.
That's
So yeah, this is,
unexpected, but
shows a couple things that we have in our collection. And then for fun, Ed, I ran down today and got the rest of the things that we have. These are these push seaters then?
These are horse-drawn, yeah.
Or yeah, not the big giant ones that we had earlier, but
These
we've
were
got a
before. A person walked behind and held the handles to hold it in the ground and guide it. The horses pulled it. Again, 3 boxes, seed, fertilizer, and then your grass seed in the front on some of them. And interesting that the one made in Springfield was called a Hoosier, which we now associate with Indiana, but nonetheless, they called it that.
So this was an International Harvester one. We've got a Superior one, and we've got an Oliver one down on the first floor in the expo hall. And then on this one, I wasn't sure.
Whoop.
I'm certain we have this in our docent manual, but Ed, I'm not sure what either of these things are off the top
Okay,
of my head.
this is a dump rake. When the reaper went through and cut the hay, it would be laying on the ground. In order to save the work of raking it together by hand, the horse pulled this, and you pull it through the field and see the tines, they called them tines, the metal thing sticking down. They would rake it, and when it got bunched up under there, the operator would take his foot and jam that lever right there. Oh, you went past it. You were on it.
Right there.
Over, right. Oh, slow down. Go to the over.
Oh,
right
this
there.
lever here.
When he kicked that lever with his foot, the teeth raised up in the air and dropped that bunch of hay. It was the wheels engaged gear that raised it up, rolled forward, dropped it down, continued raking. It was called a buck rake. So you raked piles of hay together. Made it easier to pick up if you're going to throw it on the wagon. The thing on the right-hand side is a cultivator. And the thing that makes it unique, you see the lever in the middle? You held it, or you were holding on to the green handles. When you pulled that lever towards you, the V shape of the teeth spread out further. So if you were in a narrow row between something, you pulled it in so you didn't plow out the good plants. And if the row got wider, you widened it out and you could continue cultivating a wider path. It's as simple as that. An adjustable cultivator.
Oh, cultivator. Okay. How about this was an Evans Foose, another local company. Another one of Mr. Foose's endeavors.
That's a corn planter with no fertilizer attachments, one of the rudimentary ones. You opened the box with their name on it, you dropped the corn in, you rode on the seat, the big lever lifted it up out of the ground so the horses could turn on the end, and then you put it back down in the ground. The runners along the bottom opened the ground, slid through the ground, and the corn dropped down, and the wheels that are concave in the back, they rolled over it and pressed the ground back down around the seat.
I say we've got this one over here. I've got the front and the back of it.
Probably most people recognize what that is. That's a manure spreader.
That's when I remembered.
The only thing that's missing is there's no web in the bottom, a chain web, a continuous chain that brought the manure back as the beaters tore it loose, and then on the spreader on the back, spread it through it evenly out over the ground. And I think that's a
yeah, I could not find any marking on that one. Oh wait, there might have been some. Oh wait, that looks like that might say Superior. That little plate on the front there. I didn't see that earlier when I was in front of it. Then I just threw in some other thing. We'd had this one out at the fair a few years ago. This is an unrestored one, but this was a potato cutter. And Ed explained this, or we were talking about this earlier, that when you get your eyes on your potatoes, this cuts it up into plantable chunks because the eyes are what you're going to get to grow. So this will slice it up. So potato seeds, is that what they call those?
Yeah, that's the way you plant a potato. You took a potato, you cut it in slices, and you put slices in the ground, and they grew a new potato for you.
And then this is just some things that we moved into a new storage facility. in the last few weeks, and Ed was out there helping move stuff, and he was helping us identify some of the things that I wasn't sure what they were. So he was trying to explain what this is. So I'll let him do that again.
This is check row wire. The corn planter would go back and forth across the field. Back in the day, they had 40-inch rows. The rows were 40 inches wide. So if you set this up and this ran through the planter, and there's one of those wide pieces, those little link-like things, every 40 inches. So a person would stand at each end of the field, anchor it in the ground. They would drive down through there with that going through the machine, and every time one of those links came up, it tripped and dropped 3 kernels of corn. 40 more inches, drop 3 kernels of corn. 40 more inches, drop corn. You went across the field. So the corn was very evenly spaced at 40 inches. Then you picked it up and you moved it carefully, and you did the whole field that way. And when you got done, no matter which way you looked at the field, the rows were straight. You had 40 inches going north to south. And because you moved it carefully, you could look and see 40 inches east and west between the stalks of corn. So when it came time to cultivate, the first time you cultivated north to south, missing the weeds that were directly between the stalks because the cultivator shoes couldn't get in there. The next time you cultivated east to west. So you got those weeds that you missed between the stalks on the first row. It took a great deal of effort. Took 3 people to do it, 2 to move at each end to move the chain, and 1 to drive the planter. It was a great idea that never really went very far.
And that thing is heavy. It didn't seem like it was easy work either. So this is another thing that we have in that. Can't remember what you said this was, Ed.
This is a fanning mill, seed cleaner mill, clipper mill. It goes by 3 names. The farmers kept wheat, oats, alfalfa, clover, any kind of seed they kept from the previous crop to plant in their new crop. When they harvested it, whether it be it with a combine or a thrashing machine, no matter what, it had chaff, straw, and dirt in it. They wanted it clean so it would go through the grain drill without clogging up. So they ran it through this cleaner. They had screens that screened it. The big paddles there, when they were spinning, created a lot of air, and it blew the small, lightweight stuff away from it, and the good stuff dropped out the bottom. It took a lot of work to turn that. Just imagine standing there cranking.
So that's, I think, it for as far as the different machinery and pieces that we have. So Ed, if we run across anything else that we're not sure what it is, we'll have to send you pictures. But there was so, I mean, I know we went over normal that we normally do, but there was so much more we could have talked about as far as like old farming family history. We know that there's a lot of that we've gotten, represented in our archives. We know that there's centennial and bicentennial farms all throughout the county. So they all have documentation of, how long they've been here. We've got that kind of stuff in our archives as to, to help them prove that information, and lots of other local stuff. So we didn't even try to touch on all of that. So there's so much more that we could do. I know that a couple of years ago, the families at the fair, we had done some videos about the multi-generational farming families, which there's a lot of those in the county as well. So we had some videos highlighting some of those families that have kept it in their families for generations. So there's so much more that we could talk about. But Ed, I really appreciate you being here for this one, especially and all the programs you come to. But it's good to have your expertise here, and to know that there's lots of other people in this county that that know more about this and that keep things going and that have kept things going for many generations with on all the farms that are around here. So really great. But I could go to our next slides. If you're not following us, we'll be sharing these videos later online and some of our other social media. If you would like to donate directly anything there monetarily, this is the link for that. But we're always happy to talk to people about stuff that they have that they want to give. those links are in the chat. Thank you, Casey. And then if you could think of anything else that you want to add or have any questions, you can email us.
Thank you.
But glad you guys came, and we've got this recorded. And I know I missed a little bit at the beginning, but I think we just missed a little bit of that original wall and me talking about the corn.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
think
not a
we're-
big deal. We might go back and
Yeah.
get some of that later, but our next program is going to be about the National Road, which is another subject that I'm surprised we haven't touched on before in a virtual program. We've got a lot that we can talk
I
about the
think
National Road.
we've probably touched on it, but not
Yeah.
focused on it. So
So we'll talk a little bit more about the National Road, and then at the end of October program is going to be a virtual exhibit opening / program for about magic, having to do with local magician and former police officer Herman Carr. So we'll be working on that because we're working on an exhibit that will be opening at the end of October. So we're going to do a virtual program to go along with that. So like that'll be a fun one too. So thanks for coming tonight, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, everybody, and I'll see you hopefully on Friday then. Bye-bye.
See you.
Dick. See you
Have a good
Friday.
night. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome.